Good morning, Drawing and Painting 2. This is Miss Davis here. I am hearing great things about you guys working on your color theory packets, so I'm very proud of you. Thank you for working so hard. The next part to this is I really want to talk in this video about the different tools that you're going to be using for this unit. You've started using some of them already, but before we go any further, I want you guys to think about all of your options when you go to do the first preliminary project. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the different types of color pencils that we're going to be using for this unit. In Drawing and Painting 2, we tend to use better materials. We use Prismacolor color pencils instead of the Crayola. There's a reason for this. Prismacolor color pencils is a professional grade medium, and so it has richer pigments and produces beautiful work. Crayola color pencils are a little bit cheaper in that they have a lot of wax. So every color pencil is made up of a pigment and a binder. A pigment is usually like the minerals that are found. They take those minerals, different chemicals, and make a pigment powder, and then they have a wax binder. And the amount of the wax in the color pencil kind of determines how hard the lead is. So Prismacolors have really soft leads because they have lots of pigment and not a lot of wax. Those Crayolas have lots of wax binder, and therefore you get what's called wax bloom, and you never really get to, the colors aren't as rich. So we have three different types of Prismacolor color pencils that we're going to talk about today. The Premier are the pencils that you guys each got a case of. There's 12 colors. These are your basic colors. In this case, you do have a black, but we hardly ever use it. That black is to be replaced with indigo blue. And then I'm also giving you a colorless blender, and you have white, and we'll talk about what you can use those for in a second. But you should have 12 different colors. And you want to make sure, because the leads are so soft and rich with this, that you do not drop them, because if you do, you're going to break the lead on the inside of the pencil, and every time you go to sharpen it, it's going to fall apart. So we have the Premiers, which are really soft, great for shading. Then we have what's called the Very Thins, and the Very Thins, you're going to have a case like this in class, have kind of like an octagon feeling to them, shape to them, so they feel like a regular pencil. The Very Thins have a lot more wax in them. They still use a high quality pigment, so you're still getting those rich colors, but you're able to do things like fine lines and lots of really tiny detail with the Very Thins. We only have one pack of these, so make sure that you take care of them, sharpen them. They're unsharpened, so you don't want to sharpen the name of the color off. Make sure you sharpen the opposite end. The third we have are watercolor color pencils, and I have one pack of these as well, and you're more than welcome to use these for your final. They're amazing. You don't do the whole piece in them, but basically we have a tin box of them somewhere in class, but I just want to show you, I have a little bit at home, and these are, instead of having a colored casing, they actually have the natural wood casing, which makes them very different. The only downfall is they do get kind of mixed up with the colorless blenders, so you just want to make sure that you're really using a watercolor pencil when you're grabbing one. Miss Unknown uses these, so if they're not in the class, run down to the photography room and see if she has our pack. With this, you just shade like you would a normal color pencil, and then depending on how much water you use, it can bleed out, and you can make it very kind of runny and watercolor like, or you can just really get rid of the tooth very controlled, is a really great way to use those as well. So we have three different types of color pencil. In order to create the different effects, we tend to either burnish or not to burnish would be the question. So burnishing is when you cover the tooth of the paper in order to get rid of any of the little white specks. I talked about this a little bit in the last PowerPoint. Some artists like to burnish, some don't burnish at all. As long as you're consistent, that's great. Burnishing can also be used for a textural tool. So if you're creating something that's glossy or high shine like glass or even the skin of an apple, you can go ahead and burnish it with the colorless blender that you're getting. Now, if you want to burnish highlights, that's where I recommend burnishing with the white color pencil, because you can see that it's the same exact color, but now it's much brighter. It's less saturated. So colorless blender for purely saturated burnishing, and then the white color pencil for highlights. Or you can keep it unburnished and just be very consistent with it and make sure that you're still doing a great job shading. The indigo, I wanted to tell you, is like the new black. I don't hardly ever use black when I use color pencils. I like to use as many colors as possible, and I'll talk to you a little bit in my theory of picking colors for different projects in the next video. But one of the most important colors that you're going to have is indigo. And indigo really gives you that one color that you go in and you kind of shade in your darkest values that kind of makes the whole piece very cohesive. It runs throughout the whole piece in little tiny bits here and there. So it's great for making really dark values and creating like a cohesive kind of unifying feeling towards the end with rotating that color. I'll show you how to do undertones with that later on. In order to erase or pick up any of the color pencil, we have a couple different methods that we can use. We have color pencils do erase, and if you scrub hard enough, you can get most of it up fairly easy. And depending on the paper, and we'll talk about that in a second, usually you just take the last layer off with the wax and the color comes up great with the Prismacolor white plastic erasers. Every colorless blender and every indigo should have a cap eraser. They actually work really well. I do have a few of these pencil erasers around the classroom, but you want to make sure that you're using them really the right way and not ruining them, because I can't order them anymore and I absolutely love these. So really small refined details, if you're not sure how to use them, find somebody that does know how to use it or choose a different method of erasing. And then we have the curved X-Acto blade. And when we get into techniques, we'll look at incising and stuff like that, and you'll be able to get a better idea as to what to do with different techniques. But I really also use this for picking back out highlights, like really tiny itty bitty highlights if I have to make them super bright, and then I can just go in and burnish it with white, and I'll show you how to do all of that. What you never want to do ever is try to erase with a straight blade, because you're going to end up cutting through the paper, and that's not what we want, or we end up tearing the paper. With the curved blade, I actually can show you guys how to scrape up just the pigment, just the wax, not the paper, but you will do it. You'll end up cutting the paper with the straight one. The only thing that you ever want to use the straight blade for is sharpening the color pencil. So there's a couple different, we have a really nice sharpener in the back, but it's like one of those really, really nice sharpeners. So if you stick anything in there and it gets jammed, it may have to be gently taken apart by somebody that knows how to do it. Therefore, there has been a handheld sharpener placed at each table, and it should really stay at each table, so you can use the handheld sharpeners. If by chance it keeps breaking because the lead on the inside is broken, you may have to sharpen it with an X-Acto knife. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can either ask the teacher to do it or ask Ms. Kime to show you how to do it. If you're still not comfortable with that, then just go ahead and see if you can borrow someone else's color pencil or figure it out. But we should be good. Now, the paper that you guys are going to be using is called Bristol Board, and I end up getting vellum pressed, just because it's like a really smooth kind of paper, hardly any tooth on it. Color sits on top of it. It actually works really well with the watercolor color pencils as well, because all the pigment, it's for wet mediums as well as dry mediums. Hardly any tooth. The great thing about this is that it stays very bright. The only downfall to this is that you really want to make sure that you're practicing your patience, because if you work too quickly on this, you could end up getting some wax buildup, and it's called wax bloom, and I'll show you what that looks like later. So there's not a whole lot of tooth, so you want to be very patient and build your colors up very purposefully and slowly at a time in order to use this paper. But it gives you great results. Here's something that I'm doing on Bristol Board right now, and it's different. It's 4 different avocados, and so every single detail in all of these has to be done with the color pencils, but it's coming along. But you can see how the color, I also end up taping out the edges on most of my projects because that gives me a nice border. So you can always go ahead and use just the white artist tape that we use all the time in class. Works really well for that. Just 1-inch border all the way around. So hopefully this helps. I'll talk to you next about the different techniques that you can do with color pencils and how you're going to use these tools in different textural techniques, and then we're going to go through and create one of our first pieces studying an observation drawing of an apple, and I'll show you guys how to do that in the next video. Have a good day, you guys.